So you are able to see the slides, no?
Yes.
Okay. So now, so the last class, okay, so we have seen these parameters are there, okay. So anyway, so what we said was generally when you have lots of data, so people estimate these type of parameters, and then, like as our structural engineering or, the building codes or whatever say, so we develop some kind of, the equations. So now in our engineering, although there are 21 or maybe 26 parameters are there, the mostly used parameters are the PGA, PGV, PGD, and the response spectra. So these are the most important things which are required for engineers. Okay, so now we have got response spectra, for so many earthquakes. Say so now the thing is, what we do is we develop some kind of equations, okay, which can be used in practice or even in the building codes. Say people can use it, to design their structures itself. So so this is what we were discussing. So these type of equations, we call them as GMPs, ground motion prediction equations. So now last class I told you, like these are some type of equations where we try to predict, say, spectral acceleration, which is what is required for design, as a function of some the inputs, like you say magnitude, distance, and then the site condition, and maybe the type of the fault, like strike slip or normal, or the fault mechanism we say. So based on this, some type of a simple the equation which I can use it in the design. Okay, so like you see, for example, say in Chennai, you see, we know in Chennai, say what is the how much maximum magnitude we can expect. No, so can anybody guess? Like in Chennai, in South India, say what is the maximum magnitude you can expect in the next 100 years, or maybe in the next what is the maximum magnitude you can see in South India? No. Just guess, what is the maximum magnitude? So generally 6.5, because the highest was observed was Koina 6.5. Then we had Killari 6.3 or something. Apart from that, of course, in Kutch region we had 7.8 or something like that. But in South India, say so, so you can say that something like 6.5 is the maximum magnitude. Okay. So now if you want to design a building in Chennai or maybe a nuclear reactor or whatever, say. So I know the maximum magnitude which I can estimate, approximately around Chennai, and I know the nearby faults, from the seismotectonic atlas. I will show you after some time. So I know all the faults around, the Chennai. So I take a nearest fault, so I know the distance also. So magnitude is also known, distance also known, and as already I told you, generally, when you do the foundation, okay, the soil people report SPT, okay, standard penetration test N value. So based on the N values, I can classify my soil, rock kind of a thing and others, or the shear wave velocity, okay, whatever I said in the last class. So we can do some type of a design equation. Okay, so like Chennai say 6.5, I will substitute this, and if my site is A type or B type or N type, whatever based on the N values, I will substitute. I will get the design spectrum actual. Okay, so which I can use it in my design. So that is the how the philosophy. Okay, so for this, we started, like you see, because our independent variables are magnitude, distance, site condition, and others. So I just showed you, like you see, how your PGA or spectral acceleration, say whether they scale uniformly with increase in magnitude, or how they do it also. Okay, so and another most important thing in this, to develop these type of equations, is this distance is the most you follow, right, the culprit actual. Okay, see, like as I told you, so this is so this is basically the fault map actual of the Nepal. Okay, so you can see all these lines here. So these are all the faults, MFT, MBT, so these faults are informations are already available. So I have my site here, say my house is somewhere here actual. Okay, so now in Nepal, say what is the maximum magnitude you can expect in Himalayas?
9.
9, but it is a continent collision, right? The maximum magnitude we have seen in Himalayas was 1958.6, basically that one only. So of course 8.8, generally 9 they say they may not occur because it's a continent. So to have a 9 magnitude, say 1,000 kilometers should rupture, which they say it is not possible anyway. So I know the maximum magnitude. So now let us say I'm building a nuclear reactor or very important structure here, say. So now I have to estimate how much ground motions will be there. So I know the magnitude. So magnitude is some 9, the maximum magnitude is 9, and it will occur. So which is the closest fault to this site? Now, so if you see all the faults I have plotted here, so this fault if I take, say, okay, the closest fault or something, I can easily find out my distance also. But as already I told you, what's the problem with the distance? Now, what's the problem with the distance? No.
You can take different types of distance.
So several are there. Yesterday I showed you that flat file, right? So many distances are there, and for large magnitudes, it is ridiculous actually. But of course, in practice, like these faults are already known, say. So now you can take the nearest, closest distance. Like for example, this is my fault, okay? So now for this fault, the nearest, this is the closest distance actually, okay? So you can take this closest distance RJB or whatever, and then site condition is known. So you can fit some type of equation, and then so that response spectra, say, so the design engineers they can use in their for the design of the nuclear reactors or dams are very important structures itself. So that is the concept of GMPs, okay? So with distance there is a problem. So several distances are there because earthquake source is not a point, it is a finite source. So when the things are finite, say, then it becomes very difficult, okay? You can do so many distances and others can be there. It is an extremely difficult issue. So which is the best? Now also we don't have any answer. So but international practices, everybody uses RJB, okay? So this the most now RJB or RRUP, but RJB is the one which is widely used. But in India, still we use hypocentral distance or the epicenter only, because in India we don't have these type of finite fault slip models, and many are not there. So we have no idea, you see, how these things vary for our this one in our Himalayas or in our South India, okay? So now another most important thing I told you last class was, the three type, the tectonic environment plays a large thing, like active, then stable, continental, and subduction. So in olden days, people used to mix all kinds of data sets, but now you should not do that. So, you should not mix Koina data with Himalayas, okay? Or you should not mix Indo-Burma, Andaman, that place with Himalaya, or maybe in South India. This is not allowed, because the ground motions, say in Himalayas, in the South India, in subduction, they will look entirely different itself. So like you see, if you take like many people they do these mistakes. So they take Himalayan data, say, because Himalaya earthquakes occur, we have lots of data from the Cosmos website. So they take Himalayan data, okay, and they will analyze the structures in South India. So you have a problem here. So if your structure is located in this range, say, so the you may feel that your structure may be safe for Himalayan earthquakes, but for if really earthquake occurs in South India, then we have a huge the problem itself. So this is a very serious issue. And finally, this also I told you, like as magnitude, the spectral accelerations of several time periods, they behave in a different fashion. That is a magnitude scaling, we say. So there is not uniform scaling we have, okay? So variety scalings will come. I showed you that Fourier spectrum also. So 10 seconds thing will increase by 1000 times, whereas low time periods will increase by 2 times. Okay, so this is how the graphs looks like. And distance also I showed you, like here also there is a period dependence. So if it is a long time periods, say, so you can see a lot of scatter you will see, but whereas shorter time periods there, the scatter will be very less also. So like this, there are several patterns you can observe. Then there's a hinge also I showed you, because with magnitude, say, so things you follow, right, it increases after some time, like a bilinear curve, or quadratic also sometimes, so quadratic means you see something like this actually, okay? So we will have variety of the things itself, which one may have to use in our to develop a GMP. So now that's what we said. So quadratic is there, or some linear or simple quadratic or bilinear kind of a things people use in practice with respect to magnitude. So quadratic equation or bilinear equation, we try to use it. Okay, so and of course apart from those things is so the another most important thing is the site response. Okay, so here also you will see for rock you will have different this one, soil will behave in a different this thing. So last class I told you the generally in practice in India or many this one we use n value. Okay, the SPT, the standard penetration test or something, you see we use it in the practice. But internationally say people use this shear wave velocity, okay, on the top 30 meter VS30 they use it to classify the soil. So for soil classification, say we use this VS30. So there is international guidelines are there. Now our IS code goes way by N value, but now the new IS code say which will may come this year or maybe next year. So this type of soil classification will be there. A, B, C, D, E type of a soil classification. Even our IS code also is going to follow, or maybe we were trying to look at you see the sediment depth or something like that. You see, so that these things will come up. But if you see international building code, Bangladesh code, or all the neighboring countries are Euro code and other things. So they have this type of classification based on the shear wave velocity itself. And generally in our India, say people use rock, hard rock, soft rock, that rock, this rock. So in our India, typical rocks, say it means some 620 thing and 310 meter per second itself. Okay. So now here also I showed you last class. So when hard rocks, say, so you will see very less values. But when it is a soil site, say the long time periods basically, so there will be huge the amplification will be there. But whereas when you see the PGA and other things, you will not see much amplification, only one or maybe 1.5 or twice or something like that. You will see all these details itself. Okay, so we have observed how our data varies with magnitude and how the data varies with the distance, of course the site condition, then focal that fault mechanism, so many variables are there, but we will see some simple things itself. Okay, so now we have seen how ground motion varies with all these variables. So now we have to decide what type of equations I have to fit actually. So like for example, say log of PGA. Okay, so how it varies with respect to magnitude, how it varies with respect to distance. I showed you that scaling, quadratic, bilinear or something. So how do we decide this one? Okay, so this also I showed you there is a lots of data sets are there. And so the first thing, say, as already I told you, in when you are having lots of data, what is the first step one has to do? No.
Find the mean.
No, when you have lots of data, right, the first thing is you have to check whether the data is normal or not actual. Okay, so if it is a normal, say, so the guideline is skewness should be 0, kurtosis should be 3. So this is our guideline actual. Okay, and of course earthquakes, they are not Gaussian. Okay, so you will see these type of the complicated, the skewness is all positive skewness, then kurtosis is also is not around 3. Sometimes you will have extremely very high kurtosis, 122. You can see the long time periods, which shows the data is highly the non-Gaussian kind of a thing. So anyway, so these is how the data looks. Now how does the empirical the forms you followed? Say like for example, if PGA, as already I told you, the central limit theorem and others. So if PGA is not Gaussian, so what do we do in practice? And peak values generally they will not be whether PGA will be a normal random variable or something else. What type of random variable will be PGA? Peak values generally. Now, some of if you have done probability courses, say, okay, so what type of random variable will be peak values?
Extreme value distributions.
Extreme value distribution will be there, but what do we do it in practice generally? See, whether PGA I can model as a normal random variable. I can use normal distribution to model PGA. Or response spectra. Response spectra is also maximum values only. Okay, the maximum response of a single degree of freedom system is nothing but our response spectra. So these are all peak values basically. So what do we do peak values whenever you have extreme value distribution is there? Of course, that is too complex or something. What do we generally do in our probability, our engineering? See, like for example, Young's modulus. Okay, Young's modulus or moment of inertia. So what type of random variables are they? No. What do we do? Like Young's modulus of steel, concrete, or something, say. No. Can we model Young's modulus, moment of inertia as a normal random variable, say? Now, what do we do generally in practice? So Young's modulus, what type of random variable it is? Are PGA peak values actually? So what type of random variables are? How that PGA looks like? Whether PGA can be negative peak values?
No, sir.
Because what is a PGA? It is a maximum absolute you have taken. Okay, so even the response spectrum is also maximum absolute. So there is no negative or a positive actually. Okay, so all are positive values only. So now normal distribution, the problem is for normal distribution, say what is your x-axis for normal distribution? It goes from
Minus infinity to plus.
Minus infinity to plus infinity, the normal distribution. So now Young's modulus, moment of inertia, they are all positive or negative?
Always positive.
Always positive. So now how do we handle these things? So normal distribution you cannot use actually. The problem is, all these variables are positive, positive, positive kind of a thing. So what do we do in probability theory? Some little simple things we use actually. What do we do? No. So we want normal distribution only, okay, because normal distribution means it is easy to understand and easy to solve the problem. But data, there is no negative values in the data. Data is always positive actually. So now still I want to use the normal distribution. What do you do?
Change our variable.
Change of very excellent. What is that change? Tell me. What do we do?
X minus mu by sigma. Something.
No, x minus mu by sigma is a linear transformation. Okay, x minus mu means you will get a standard normal. So whether you change the mean or standard, but still normal. See, once you have done x minus mu by sigma, what is it also goes from minus infinity to infinity. If you take mean as 10,000, sigma as some 5,000, still you will have minus infinity to infinity only. That is a problem of normal distribution. So instead of going like this, you go like here, say still there is a chance, like here if you have done also, there is a chance of getting a negative value. What do we do in the probability? What you told is correct only. Change of variable. What is another intelligent way of doing things? What do we do in probability? And it is not normal, and if it is not normal distribution, say, then you cannot use linear regression. You followed linear regression. The assumption is because you are adding several random variables, say the output should go to normal only. You followed. So I don't want to leave this, I don't want to leave this also. What is that compromise? What is that we do? Change of variable only. What is that we do in probability theory? The easiest thing. No. So in regression also you do. So if x, y versus x, if you plot, if it is looking complex, what is that you try to do? Now, what is that you do? You know this, log normal distribution? Now, log normal distribution, have you heard? Now, what do we do in log normal? Now, what do we do in log normal distribution? Well, how it is log normal is connected to normal?
If x is normal, then e power x will be log normal.
So now log of y, you followed, right? So if y is normal, say, okay, so this log y, if you take, log y is log normal, log of y will be normal distribution. We followed. So PGA is a log normal. So we assume that all our peak values, say, whatever we are having, okay, so they are all positive quantities, and log normal, it can never be negative actually. Followed, it is always a positive quantity. So the main assumption what we try to do in many other regressions also. So all the we assume that all these quantities, of course, what you told is correct. That is extreme value distribution you have to use, but we assume that all these things are log normal. So if PGA is log normal, say log of PGA will become normal distribution actually. Followed. So the things are very, very easy actually. So instead of doing regression for PGA, say you do regression for log of PGA itself. So log of PGA can be taken as a normal distribution. So that is the assumption. So PGA is not normal distribution, but log PGA is normal distribution. So this is how you see we assume in our all the GMPs. Okay, that is how everything is calculated. But of course here this is also wrong because right, the extreme peak values always goes to the extreme value distribution, Gumbel or the type 1 type 2, you remember Weibull distribution or something should be used, but here this is used, and of course it works also in practice. Okay, so log PGA is normal, log response spectra is normal, log of spectral acceleration is normal, but spectral acceleration is a log normal distribution. That is how we do, and of course the theory also supports like that actually. Okay, so now so the functional forms say, so generally how it varies with the distance. Okay, basically, so I have shown you those old plots itself, how it varies with the distance and others. Okay, so here also if you see this distance plots say, so how it is varying with the distance as r increases, say, how it is varying now in a linear fashion or in a logarithmic fashion. So this is a log graph actual. Okay, so this is also log, this is also log. So when you plot in a log graph, how things are varying now?
Linear.
No, so you can assume it to be, of course, there is these are complicated. It's not this one, but of course, I followed it. Some linear kind of a things, you can assume actually. Okay, so something like that, by plotting the data, say we can get all these information. So this is how we do. So there are two things will be there. One is y is PGA. Okay, so y is a PGA. So if you take log of logarithm on both the sides, say, so now I will be having two terms. One is A4 times R, another one is log R. So two things will be there. So log of PGA, the log of PGA anyway is a normal distribution. So it will be two things will be there. So here in these two things say, so this quantity, that is A4 times the R itself, the R e to the power of CR. So this is related to this one. This is related to this one, because when you take logarithm on both the sides, log y is equal to log exponent gets cancelled. So I will have minus c times r will become, so c we have written as a4 here, and 1 by r say. So log of when you take, you see it becomes some log r or something like that. We will have these two terms itself. Okay, so now here, so this term say, okay, so e to the power of minus c times r. So this term generally we call this term as unelastic damping actually. Okay, unelastic damping. So generally distance, what happens is as distance increases, say, so the p ground acceleration decreases basically. So it is something like distance is like a damping you followed. So there are two types of damping are there. One is unelastic damping we say, another one is radiation damping. Two types of dampings are there. Radiation, then unelastic. Okay. Now unelastic damping is like our viscous damping. So now in our single degree of freedom system, say how the response is related to viscous damping. You remember that Duhamel's integral. So y of t is, you remember, so integral 0 to t, gx g double dot of tau. So where viscous damping comes into picture? No. So where viscous damping comes into picture, you have seen that expressions right long back.
Exponential.
Exponential. Okay, so so that terms are e to the power of I omega t. So if you see those expressions, long back we have seen also. Now, so where is that term? Okay, so any terms if you take, say, okay, so you will have, right, so you will have, so this damping, say it comes somewhere here, exponential term will be there. So here also we use the same concept here, so that e to the power of that expression, whatever we are seeing, that C4 or something, it is something like the unelastic damping we say. So this A4 is called as viscous damping or unelastic damping. Now we have another damping also, that is y is proportional to 1 by r. So when you take logarithm, so then anyway log y log r comes. Now what is this term? What does it indicate physically? As distance increases, okay, PGA is also decreasing. What do you call this type of damping? So this is known as the radiation damping. What does physically tells you? Yeah, physically what it tells you, y is proportional to, inversely proportional to r. Yeah. What does it tells you?
As R increases, PGA value decreases.
No, that is fine, but why it has to decrease, right? That is a question. Physically, why R increases means, why it should decrease, obvious, right? No. Now, why it should decrease? The physically you have to tell the meaning why it happens. So, like for example, energy when earthquake occurs, energy releases near a point. So this is a point where blast or earthquake has occurred actually. Okay. So now as the R increases, what happens to this energy? So initially whole energy will be concentrated near a point actually. Now what happens as R is increasing, so the energy will spread in equally in all the directions. A sphere kind of a thing you have. So the energy now it will be spreaded like this actually. Now as R increases, energy will be spread like this. So now what is happening here? Now, so initial energy was concentrated in a small space. Now if it is spreading, say. So what happens with the energy? What will be the energy at this point? Now what happens? Energy at this point?
It goes on decreasing because it's spreading
Decreases.
more.
Why? Because whole energy has
It's spread on larger area.
it is spread in a large region. See, like you are having energy of 100 joules or something, say. If it is spread in small region, say, and it will be very high. But the same energy spread in a large kilometer, 1000 kilometers or whatever, then automatically you follow it, that automatically decreases. So this is what we call as the radiation damping actual. Okay. So there are two types of dampings will be there in even everywhere. Okay. Concrete or steel, it doesn't matter. So these two things say. So one is radiation, another one is the anelastic damping itself. So this is how these two terms becomes very important, and of course mathematical also later on after some time when we will do the derivations for a point source and others, you will see that these two things will be there itself. Okay. So now this is also a very important thing which we will use it in our GMPs. Now, so this is how a typical, the ground motion you see looks like. So these are the terms. Can you identify what is C3? What is C3 and C4? And this is log of PGA. So log of PGA is basically a normal random variable. Okay, so this is how we assume. So Y is log normal, but log Y is a normal random variable. Okay, so now, so this term indicates, now what does these terms indicates? Now, log R term indicates, now, just now I told you that log R is
Anelastic damping.
So log R is what? Not anelastic. Anelastic means Y should be e to the power of minus CR. So when you take Y say log this side, then e to the power of C4R comes actual. So C4R is what damping?
Anelastic.
Unelastic damping actual. Whereas this is log Y, log R. So log gets cancelled. So it is something like 1 by R. And this is the radiation damping actually. Okay, so these how the simple equations they look like. Now with respect to magnitude, basically, okay, so this concept came based on the Richter's magnitude. You remember long back I told you how do you find out Richter's magnitude? So if I have epicenter is here, I have a station here, so at my station I will find out the this is my time history. What is Richter's magnitude? You remember how do you find out Richter's magnitude? What is the amplitude and how magnitude are related?
Depends on the distance.
No, not distance. See how magnitude and amplitudes are related. You see the previous slides. If I know the amplitude of this, this one, what is magnitude? Distance is different. How it is related, both of them? Now you have to see the previous slides. Okay, so if I have amplitude, what did we say? You take log of amplitude, say A. So this anyway distance you have, so you have to plot on that graph. You remember? So we had a graph. Log of amplitudes was there, then distance was there, then we had a curves like this actually. So this is for 6 magnitude, 5 magnitude, 4 magnitude. So you have to plot that value and do this one. So now already the magnitude, whenever you see any magnitude, say magnitude and the amplitude, okay, they are all related through log actual. So log of amplitude is related to magnitude. You can see the previous slides also. So in our this type of equations, we use the same, the concept. because we are taking log of the amplitude, say. So that is somehow, it is related to magnitude actually. And sometimes previously we have seen, right, you can use a bilinear, or you can use whatever quadratic or something also you can use. But this is the simplest, the GMP equation actually. Okay, no site condition. It is extremely simple equations, which we used to develop long back. Now people have now as more and more data came, say. So now people have started, like you can see here. So there is this is Richter's magnitude concept, but now this quadratic thing or some other complicated thing came. Then C5 logger, then the fault mechanism, then hanging wall, foot wall. So many things have come into picture itself nowadays. Now, so this is what I told you. So C2M is related to, the definition of earthquake magnitude. That's what I told you. Okay. So logarithmic measure of the amplitude of ground motion. So this is a geometric spreading, or, 1 by the radiation damping also. So this is our anelastic attenuation also. Okay. So these are some of the equations I'm showing you. These are some of the old, the equations which people used to use, like you see, magnitude. This is a quadratic scaling. So these are the initial equations which everybody used to do. But nowadays, many complicated are there. So you can see, so C1 plus C2 plus, you can see how it is related. Then C5 anyway, we have this also, intercept is there. Then we have log, this is, this term is anelastic damping. Then now people have added even, the saturation actually, the magnitude saturation also, because all the data you can see here. See, like in the near field, say. So if you see with respect to this one. So now here what is happening? So now if you see in this region essentially, or if you see PGA, so what is happening in this region? Irrespective, now we have shown here all the magnitudes. I'm showing 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 78. Now when you are 1 kilometer very close to the fault, say, in this region, what is happening? So what is happening, whether it is a 4 or a 5 or a 6 or a 7, say, you can see here. What is a PGA?
They are almost the same.
They are all same actually. But when you go far away from the faults in this region, you will see a large, the scatter. So this portion, say, where, irrespective of the magnitude, when you are very close to the fault, all the data will show, it will convert into some type of a point. So this is what we call as a magnitude, the saturation. So this also, so this can be expressed by these type of complicated, the functional forms, like you see, R plus C6 times this one, say. So this extra term, whatever you have added, say, okay, so this tells you, the magnitude, the saturation term. Okay, so like this, many kind of functional forms are there, because these are empirical, no? So empirical things means, you can add whatever way you like actually. So that, it fits the data in a nice fashion. Okay, so now, so generally, so we have seen, so there are a lot of complicated functional forms are there. So generally what everybody says is, when you want to develop these type of regression equations, say, so if you make it too complex, what happens? If you make it too complex, then the designer may not use it at all. You followed it. That is also a problem. And if you make it too simple, say, so then, it may not able to fit the data properly. Okay, so fitting the data, say, errors may be very large. But if you make it more complex, say, then it will also be very difficult itself. So there are a lot of issues are there in this data. Okay, so this is what we call as a ground motion prediction equations, where you have a M, R, and you followed some other predictive variables itself will be there. Okay, so now I will show you some of the strong motion, the databases. So this is how you see the databases, looks like actually. Okay, so this you can see. This is a recent database, okay, which is from NGA. Yesterday I showed you the Excel sheets. I hope all of you have downloaded, right, the Excel sheets. The horizontal as well as vertical is available, the flat files. Now, so how many data sets was there? You remember? What was the number? How many data was there in that Excel sheet?
21,440 or something.
Oh, excellent. You have downloaded the database.
Yes, sir.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so now this you can see. So this is the database. It looks something like this actually. So now sometimes some regions, say, you have a lot of problems here. So here this is anyway the older data set. So now here if you see the data, so in this region, we don't have any data at all. So here also there is no data. Now if we see this data, say Eastern North America or whatever this one, so in this region, say the data sets are, there is no data set at all. So only data set is available. So if you type if you develop some type of equation, say using this data, this you cannot use this in this region actually, because here the data sets is not there, so your things may be biased actually, we say. Okay, so ideal if you want to develop a GMP, say your database should be like this actually. You can see here, so here there are no gaps actually. No, everywhere you have the data. See, this region also you have data, this region also you have data, this region also, everywhere you have excellent, the databases are there. So this is a mandatory, to develop this type of a ground motion equation. That's why I told you all of you to download that NGA flat file. Okay, so that is a complete homogeneous, the database. So now once you do this, so once you have the databases, say now you have identified the functional form also. This also we have identified some log y, some m square or whatever, So this also has been identified. Now we have to do a generally, you have to fit a regression analysis. Okay, so like as already I told you, so log y is equal to c1 plus c2m plus some c3r plus c4 log r, some type of a functional form you are fitting, say. Okay, so now how do we fit this functional form? Now in earthquakes, this our seisma, this one, say you can't do ordinary, the regression analysis for the earthquake databases. There are several problems will be there, so you have to use some special the spatial aliasing, we say. Okay, so this is a serious problem in our this seismology. Okay, the reason is like this. Say like for example, say I have I have put instrumented in Himalayas. So in Himalayas, I have put like this is my Himalayan faults are like this. So I have put instruments like this, one instrument here, another instrument here, another instrument here, like this, like this, like this. I have put up the instruments. Now if a 3 magnet, and let us say the farthest, the nearest instrument is some 10 kilometers. So every 10 kilometer I have put up instrument up to 1000 kilometers. Okay. Now if 4 magnitude occurs in Himalayas, how many of the instruments will get triggered? No. So I have a station at 10 kilometer, 50 kilometer, 100 kilometer, 200 kilometer, up to 1000 kilometers. I have put the instruments like this. Now if 3 magnitude occurs, how many instruments will give you data for 3 magnitude? It will be felt up to 1000 kilometers, or it will be felt up to only small distances only?
Only small distance.
Small distance means what happens when there is a 3 magnitude, only this station may record actually. You followed, you are having 10 instruments. So for 3 magnitude, say whenever there is a 3 magnitude in Himalaya, how many stations will trigger? Only one station will trigger. When it is a 4, 4 means it will be felt up to how much large? It will more or 3 or this one? More than 3 or less than 3?
More
than 3. So then it means, let us say 2 stations, like 20 kilometers it has spread. So the far away stations, no data from this far away stations. It will 0, 0, 0, 0 value. Suppose if it is a 6 magnitudes, then you will have the waves will propagate up to large distances. So then you will be having 3 stations. Now if it is 9 magnitudes, now what happens if it is 9? See, if 9 magnitude occurs in Himalaya, say in Chennai also, you will see vibration or not?
Yes, sir.
No, so it will be far away. So if I have put up an instrument in Chennai, say if there is a 9 magnitude in Himalaya, instrument will record actually. But if there is a 4 magnitude, there will be no data at the Chennai station itself. So now what is the problem you are seeing here? Although the instruments you have done homogeneous, like uniform instrumentation is there, the problem what happens is for small magnitudes actually. Okay, so what is that you see here? Whether there is any uniform or it is a non-uniform. So you have put an array, uniform or non-uniform? No.
Non-uniform.
So this is a non-uniform data actually. You followed. So although you may put instruments, you have put nicely every kilometer you would have put the instrument. But the problem with earthquakes is the 3 magnitude energy will be small only. Which magnitude will have large number of stations? Which
So
magnitude
higher
will have
magnitude earthquake will have large.
will have more number of stations actually. Okay, that is this is a problem. So that is a non-uniform. Now another problem also we have. What is another problem? See, among the 3 magnitude, 4 magnitude, 5 magnitude, 6, 7, 8, 9 say. Now which one will occur frequently?
3, 4.
So like let us say I have put up instruments in Himalaya for 50 years actually. Okay, now in this 50 years say, how many 3 will be there? No. How many 9 will be there?
So only 9 may or may not.
9 may occur or may not occur also, but 3 magnitude there will be. I showed you right the frequency of earthquakes in the first slides. Okay, so when how many 3 magnitudes will be there in Himalayas? If you take this one in the 50 years, say you will have like you say 2000 or 3000 earthquakes will be there, 3 magnitude. Then as magnitude increases, say what happens? 4 magnitude maybe some hundreds will be there. 5 magnitudes maybe tens will be there. 6 magnitude will be you see some 5 or like in Himalaya if you see only Uttarkashi we have seen the Chamoli we have seen 6.5 6.9 itself. Now 8 magnitude or 8.9 you will have only 1 or something like that also. So here also whether the data is a uniform or non-uniform. So if I put up an array in Himalayas actually, so you will the problem is the stations problem you have. If 9 occurs, 20 stations are there. So for 9 magnitude, all 20 stations will record. If it is a 3 magnitude, so 1 station will record actually. So your number of stations or number of the data points say in distance, they depend on the magnitude. That is one problem we have. So we don't have like a homogeneous data. 3 also at 20 station, 9 also at 20 station. That problem is also ruled out actually. Now if you put up a strong motion array in a region, now you will be getting more data of which earthquakes?
Smaller earthquakes.
Smaller earthquakes will be. And another problem with smaller earthquake is they will not be felt up to larger distances. That is also a problem actually. You followed. So in seismology, whatever your flat file, whatever if you see here also, the problem what we see is this is spatial aliasing we say actually. You followed the spatial aliasing problem we say. So the spatial aliasing problem is the magnitudes are also not uniform. Then 3 magnitude cannot be felt up to larger distance. And so the number of stations say for this will not be non-uniform kind of a thing will be there. So when the data is non-uniform, say like if the data was uniform like 3 also 20, 9 also 20 and 103, 105, 106, 107, 108 like that, then you could have done it in a nice fashion. But here you cannot do the ordinary regression, you see. So the flat file whatever you have got say, you cannot directly fit some log y, some y is equal to mx plus. So all these things are not allowed actually. If you fit also, your regression will be biased actually. Okay, so the biased means at large distances say which earthquakes will control at large distances 100 or 200 kilometer, which magnitudes will control?
Higher magnitudes.
And near field, very near to the fault,
Lower magnitudes.
of course low magnitude amplitudes will be small, but then as a number wise they will be 100, but one 8 magnitude will be there. So that is a big the problem. So if you don't do this one, simply fit the data, then gone case only. Okay, so now for this so there are special regression methods how to be followed. So that is what we say is a 2 steps regression. Okay, of course nonlinear regression only, weighted regression also we say. Then we have random effects the regression. This is a standard problem not only in our this seismic data. So this problem happens in all around the any field actually. Even in our structural engineering also, so when people are doing experiments, they may be biased kind of things only will be there. So you have to handle these type of data in a special the fashion itself. So this is what right now everybody in the most of the things nowadays everybody uses this mixed effects the regression. So these are very not ordinary regression only, but you have to do it in a very special kind of a format actually. So this regression we generally is very popular when your data is coming from different groups actually. Okay, so the data is not homogeneous data. So the data has some groupings like 9 magnitude one group, 3 magnitude one group, 4 magnitude one group. So these type of groups. So you can see here So all these points are one group actually. So these are all another group. The color, each color indicates you see another group. So now if you fit a straight line to individual groups, say, so all of the things are showing increasing trend or decreasing trend now. So if you see these points here, so all of them are individual groups basically. So how they are looking like now. See, they are all increasing trend actually. Now, if you ignore the groups, say, you don't ignore the color, simply you fit a straight line to the data set. So I will fit a curve like this actually. So this line which fits to the data set. So this comes from ordinary regression actually. You followed. So this is an ordinary regression. So if you fit ordinary lines, it passes through all the points. You will get like this actually. But what is the problem here? Now, if you see individual groups, what is that you are observing here? Now, so if individual, so now our this the line which you have fitted, say what type of trend it is showing? It is a decreasing or increasing trend?
Decreasing.
But decreasing trend it shows. But if I see individual groups, say like this group, I will see what type of a trend you are having here?
They're increasing.
Now here also. You see here also what type of trend we are having. If I see individual groups, so everywhere you are having the increasing trend. But when you do ordinary regression, say it is showing decreasing trend actually, which is wrong. It has not captured. The problem is the data is highly biased. It is not a non-uniform database. So this group points are only this region only this group is influencing. Here this group, if you see, this is influencing only this portion only of the graph. This group is only influencing this portion. Suppose if the whole data was full from 5000 to this one, if the homogeneous thing was there, say, then this problem could have not been there at all. So individual, if you see the data, it is showing increasing trend, but since because of non-uniformity of the data set, when you try to fit, it shows a decreasing trend. So for this data, if you want to, the correct fit should be, this is a correct fit line actually, okay, which matches with the trend of the data. So this is the correct one. So other one is wrong basically. Okay, so this is an incorrect one. Okay. But if you ignore the groups, then you will have these type of problems itself. So that's why we call this as the mixed effects the regression. So you cannot do just the ordinary least squares regression. It is not allowed for this type of data which is coming from variety of groups, and these groups are also, they are not homogeneous. Some group has influence in some region, some group has influence in the some region, like large magnitudes have influence at large distances, small magnitudes have influence at the short distances. So you will have an intermediate also, you have several groups also. Now another group also will be there. So like when I'm putting all the stations, say, okay, some stations would have been put only on rock type of sites. Some stations would be put up on only soil type of sites, because site condition is a big issue. See, like where to put the instruments. Generally, these instruments, are very expensive. You can't put wherever you like. You should have a power source, and generally, we don't put it in the private buildings. Okay, so these type of instruments should be located in government buildings, school buildings, or passport office, or some telecommunications place itself. So if that is, we don't have a control actually. You can't put instrument wherever you like. So private, all other issues are there. So generally, the site conditions also. So some instruments they will put up only on rock actually. Okay. So then among 10 instruments, say 9 instruments are there on rock, and 1 instrument is there in soil, say. So here also we have a problem, because some are grouping with respect to site also we have an issue. Then grouping with respect to rock also is a big issue actually. Okay. So if you try to fit a general straight line, then you will be in terms of problems itself. Okay. So this is also one more graph I am showing you here. So you can see here. So all the data. Okay. So if you fit a straight line, say, so you will get these ordinary, the least squares regression actually. Okay. So this is generally if you have fitted this data, but the data is not homogeneous. So now if you see the group wise data in each and every group, you can see the slope is different actually. So this is the the slopes of individual groups. So now since ordinary regression, we don't include this type of grouping or something like that. then the gun case only. Okay, so the correct fit is this one. So this is from the mixed effects. So this line represents the exact correct trend of the data you followed, right? It captures the correct trend. Whereas ordinary regression say you may get some best fit or whatever sigma may be small, but it is it will not be able to capture the trend in the data itself. Okay, so this is a very serious issue itself. So that's what we say, right? So this is a classical statistics they say. Like if you have all the data has been given to you, say, and if you fit a straight line, you will get like this. So this is something like price versus X, sales or something like that. They have plotted even in a supermarket also. If you go to any supermarket, say, so which items, the chocolates may be sold very fast. You see, vegetables may be sold very fast. You have atta, you have all kinds of things are there, say. So how many sales versus price, if you put, you will get something graph like this. And if you fit a straight line, so you will understand that, the price, the thing is, the price is you followed, right? As the price increases, you see, your sales are coming down actually. So this is what you see, this ordinary regression looks like. But if you group them, say atta or vegetable, tomato or whatever this one, so individually what it is showing, you see, so each this group, if you see, so now the price is increasing, the sales are also increasing kind of a thing. Okay, so individually all of them are increasing. So here you don't ignore the groups, so we ignore these groups, we just directly fit the data. So you will get a wrong picture of what is really happening to the thing itself. So the exact thing, if we can identify the groups, so these 3 points are one group, these 3 are one group kind of a thing, and then we do a special regression, what we call as mixed effects regression, say. So this is the correct curve. So same database only, but grouped data. Okay, so if we include the groups, say, we will have nice results. So in stock market or even any this one, say, so this is the mandatory. So nowadays everybody does this mixed effects. So the difference is very simple here. Okay, so y is equal to mx plus c. You can see here, of course, alpha plus beta times xk. So you can see, so here what we have done is, if there are 1000 data points are there, say, so we are not interested in groups, how many groups are there. We assume that all data is same and simply you do the regression. Okay, that is how we try to do. Now in mixed effects regression, so what we do is we include this group information also. It is not the 1000 data points. I also want to find out which data point belongs to which group also. So you will have another variable. So the data you can see xij we are writing. So here xk we write. Okay, I runs from k runs from 1 to 1000. But here what to do is ij we write actually. So let us say we are having 10 points in some 100 groups are there, say. So what to do is each group you have it is like a matrix. So you have to arrange your data in terms of a matrix actually. Okay, or groups kind of a thing. So you will have something like this. So each group, so I runs from 1 to n and j runs from 1 to ni. So n is I think the number of groups may be the number of the data points in each group. Ni may be you followed it, the number of this itself. So same data only, same thing only. In the original statistics we ignore the groups, but here we include the groups. But if you include the group, the problem is the things becomes two-dimensional, because you have to see each group what is the data point also, yij alpha. So and then nothing is alpha, say, you can see here. So previously alpha was constant, you followed. Now alpha is a different actually. For each and every group we have a different alpha. Beta remains the same. The slope of the line it is going to remain same, but alpha is a different for each and every group. And the error is also epsilon k, but here error is epsilon ij, because each group, each point you are going to do this type of regression. Okay, so this is a mixed effects regression, which is a very important when you are having these type of groups or this kind of problematic non-uniform database. Or there is also one more method in seismology we used to do long back, that is a two-step regression they used to say, to handle this group problem. Okay, nowadays mixed effects came, but in olden days mixed effects was popular recently in the last 25 to 30 years. But in olden days we used to do this two-stage regression also. So the concept is very simple actually. So like for example, this is one earthquake group data. So this is 3 magnitudes. Okay, this is, let us say, 5 magnitude or 6 magnitude data. This is 9 magnitudes. Okay, so we have a database, like this. Okay, so these are all the group data. I showed you, right, with the old figures. We had groups also, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, like that. Okay, so now this is a group data. So what we try to do is, so here what we are assuming is, so this is the line which we have to fit actual. Okay, so what we try to do is, the first we will estimate, so this individual group is there, say. So each individual group has a different errors, E1, alpha 1 kind of a thing we have, alpha, this E2, then E3, like that. So this is how, we do this regression, alpha 1 into E1. So each group has one unknown kind of a thing. So now if I subtract this alpha times E1, say alpha 1, from this group, so all of them comes to this, that's one line itself actually. You followed? So this is my line. So after subtracting, so everything will be brought to this one, and then we try to find out the regression actually. So what we try to do is, if you see this equation, say, so here the groupings are done as per the magnitudes. So these are older days, we used to do with respect to the magnitudes. Okay, so 9 magnitude means one group, 6 magnitude means another group, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So for each group, say, I have a alpha. Okay, so alpha 1 for this one, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4, like that, we used to fit. There is no magnitude. Okay, we are having only groups, and the grouping has been done based on the magnitude. So for each group, say, we will find out one constant, that is alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3 kind of a thing, and the remaining equations, say, the distance and other things will be there. We fit a equation like this. Okay, and we find out alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, alpha 4, and with respect to distances, say, we find out that C4R or C5R or whatever we have, and then you do this one. Now once this E1, E2, E3 and all those things has been found out, the alphas actually, once alphas has been found out, you do one more regression here to find out this, the functional form with respect to the magnitude itself. So this is how, we do. Or let me just see this one. So here, suppose if you see this equation, say, okay, so now in this equation, so what, this is my equation. So what we try to do is, so we have groups. So here the grouping is done only based on the magnitude actually. So I fit a equation like this, log y is equal to, some alpha 1 into, you followed, alpha I, ei kind of a thing. So sigma I is equal to 1 to some, nm. So this many groups are there, plus sorry, minus, C3, you followed, right? Log r this one, then minus C4 times r actual. So this equation I will fit actually. Okay, so this equation will have unknowns are like original equation has only 1, 2, 3, 4 only unknowns are there. But when I do this grouping, say, I have more number of unknowns. So I have C4, 1, 2, and because this entire things I have done the grouping basically. So I will be having more. Suppose if there are 10 magnitudes or 10 groups are there, say. So I will be having 10 alphas basically. So my number of unknowns will be more, because for each and every group I have a designated value itself. So 10 groups are there means, so 10 plus is 2 unknowns. So 12 unknowns will be there. Whereas in ordinary regression, I had only 4 things are there, that is how we do. So now I fit this one. So I will find out this alpha i's. Okay, so once alpha I is known, say, so this alpha I, 10 groups means, 10 alphas will be there. I will fit for this alpha C1 plus C2 times Cm actually for this value. Okay, and I will find out my C1 and C2 through this type of regression. So this regression we call as, say, two-step, the regression, because the constants, say, you are not finding them in one go. So first thing we are finding the constants with the distance C3 and C4. Then your alphas are there. Then once you have found out C3 and C4, say, and alphas, so these alphas I will fit a separate equation with respect to magnitude, because the groups or each group has an independent magnitude. I will estimate C1 and C2 itself. So totally unknowns are 4 only, that C1, C2, C3, C4 only, but we are doing in a two-step process itself because of this non-uniform, the database. So this is what we call as the two-step regression. So this is how we do. So the first thing, regress, you find out alphas, and then that with respect to distance C3, C4 or whatever this one. So once you normalize this, then you fit this alphas. Okay. So these are, so here I am showing you 3 groups are there. Okay. So for 3 groups, say, so you fit a straight line, some C1 plus C2 times M kind of a thing, and then you find out your 2 unknowns. So this is how we used to do the 2-step, the regression itself. So this is a concept actually. Okay. So like this is my one group, say, all these yellow colors. Okay. So these are all, the one group, and then, this is another group is here. So we have 2 types of, the errors are there. One error is, in a group set, in an individual group, what is the error? So this is a mean value, you can see. So for this yellow color lines, if I fit a straight line, it looks something like this is a fitted straight line. With this I can find out the error also. So this I am indicating as an epsilon, the 1j, the in individual group, what is the error? So now this group also, what is the error? That is epsilon 2 ij. So which after fitting this line to individual group, not to the entire data. Now if I fit to the entire data, say, so this is my dark black line which we have fitted to the entire, the original database. So the mean value of this group, the mean line, whatever you have fitted. So we have having 2 errors, eta 1, then the eta 2. So this we call as the inter event, the residuals. So inter event and intra event actually. So intra means inside. That is the meaning of this statement. Okay. So intra means inside the group. What is the error? Okay. Inter means the error between among the groups. Okay, between the groups or whatever you have. Okay, so these are 2 types of errors will be there in this mixed effects regression itself. So that is how we do. So you can see, so if you have any equations, so we have 2 things, eta I, epsilon I. So this is intra. So these are intra, the intra event residuals are there, whereas this is inter event actually. Okay. So 2 types of the errors will be there, intra and then inter event kind of a thing. So eta I is nothing but that error. Epsilon ij is inside a group, the overall this itself. So there are several equations are there. So I am just showing you the same thing in this type of graph also. You can see 2 things are there. Say, so this is one database. Sorry, this is one database, and this is another the database. You followed. So 2 types of databases are there. So now the so we have 2 errors. This is for the first database, and we have the second the database, and this is my this one. So we have 2 errors are there. Okay. So one error is sigma square e, that is with respect to y bar, what individual group mean. So we have the individual groups mean, and this is the overall mean actually of the entire thing itself. So there are 2 things are there. One is the distance from this mean to this mean to this. Then in a single group, say, what is the error? That is sigma r. So sigma r is your intra event, sigma e is your inter event kind of a thing. So this is the same thing only. We have fitted one line. So this dotted line, say, so this is my original thing. So I will be having 2 types of errors, sigma e and then sigma r itself. So 2 errors will be there. So this is a partition, same thing only. Okay, so you have fitted, you followed it something like this. So these are the errors. So same graph, it is shown in here itself. So this is what we call as the mixed effects, the regression. When you are having grouped data, say, you have to do this kind of the approaches. So that is how we try to do this one. So quantifying uncertainty, say, so what type of uncertainty, intra, inter. So this also becomes very important in this GMP. So okay, epistemic, aleatory. We will come back to this one also after some time. And finally, so my standard deviation will be phi square plus tau square. So the total one will be sigma square y. Okay. So this one will be square root of sigma square e plus sigma square r. Okay, intra event and inter event standard deviations here, both of them have to be added here. Okay, so these are some there are classical equations are there. Okay, and this was the first GMP which was developed in 1964 by using ordinary regression. At that time, mixed effects, all these things was not at all known to anybody. Okay, so this was some simple equations. You can see in the olden days how they developed these the equations. 1969, 1979. Now this was around 1981. So you can see simple forms came into picture. Many equations. Now Western art. Now the equations are extremely the complicated itself. Okay, so it's huge things are there. So what I will do is, I will show you. So all of you, I suggest all of you to go to this website. Okay. Now, so this website is GMP. You followed it. You just type, ground motion prediction equations. It is maintained by one Professor John Douglas. Okay, he is in UK. So he maintains all these, the GMPs. Okay, so you can see here. He has given it is like a compendium. He updates, whenever a new paper gets published, say he updates in his website also. You can see all these type of equations. He has describes, how many equations are there. All those things he gives in this nice, the website. So huge are there. So he gives lot of electrical supplement and so many things are there. Okay. So there are several references are there. Some of my own equations, which we have developed, is that is also he lists in his website. Okay, so you can see this website and you can get some idea about the GMPs. Okay, so I will stop here. Next class we will continue. So once again I will show you this this mixed effects regression, and then we will come to this one. Okay, we'll close this GMP thing. Okay, so I suggest all of you please go through this website, and very interesting website this one. You can, if you type gmp.org.uk, you will get this one. So you can see how many equations are there. Say he gives all the details are there. So he gives a nice all the compendium itself. Okay, so fine. So I will stop here. We'll continue in the next class. So if you have any questions, you can ask me.